Hey friends, visit patreon.com/FemFreak to join our podcast community.
Each day that you live is going to be the same as the day before, like literally the same as the day before, like that nothing you do has any lasting impact. Nevertheless, do you have some human responsibility to treat people well?
Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media you love. I'm Anita Sarkeesian, and I'm joined today by two women who sure feel like they're living the same day over and over again. Carolyn Pettit.
Hoo boy.
And Ebony Adams.
Yeah.
This week we're going to be talking about Palm Springs, a time loop romantic comedy on Hulu starring Andy Samberg and Cristin Milotti. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hello.
I feel like I was so low energy in that intro. Like, should I do it again and be like, and we're back? I don't have that. That took so much. That took so much out of me.
Well, we needed something in the middle between those two.
Yeah. Yep. So,
yeah, what's up?
Yeah, what's going on, everyone? What have you been pickling? What have you been...
I thought we saved that really good content for the bonus. You don't want to give away the pickling. You don't want to give away the pickling talk in the main, because then why are people gonna spring for access to the bonus episodes?
That's right.
Which you can access by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/femfreak.
Oh
I mean, look at that. So smooth. You do know that our bonus episode is a new pickling recipe every week. So you definitely want to sign up for that. It's not really. That's a total lie.
And we watch the numbers plummet.
Let's talk about this movie.
Let's talk about it.
Joining the ranks of stories like Groundhog Day and Russian Doll, the new film Palm Springs is the latest comedy to explore the possibilities that open up when people are forced to live the same day over and over and over again. It's an obvious recipe for comic hijinks since it gives protagonists the freedom to mess with other people and face no consequences. But it can also open up the door for ethical explorations of what it means to be a good person or what really matters in life. Palm Springs tries to do all of this in its brisk 90 minutes running time. But how successful is it? We're here to answer that question.
Definitively. And then once we answer it, no one else needs to say anything.
That's right.
Yep. Done. Wrap it up.
I'm going to just clear the floor right now because I just want Ebony to do whatever is about to happen.
Uh-oh. I was not ready.
Well, get ready because you're on.
Okay. I found much to enjoy about this film after it got going, but I have to admit the beginning was slow going for me. Was it last week or the week before, Anita, where you mentioned that a reader, or a listener rather, had sent in a message and they were like, oh, I was just listening to one of your first episodes where Ebony talks about how she hates whimsy.
Yes.
Spoiler alert, I still do. So it took me a minute to plug into this. I was glad that I did, ultimately, because there are some like actual delights in this film. It's a fairly smooth and easy 90-minute drink of water. But it did take me a minute to get in it. And the main reason for that, I think, is because I'm fine with Andy Samberg. Like, he's fine. But this film, for me, it should have been Sarah's POV, like, throughout, for me. You know, like, sure. I was way more interested in her. Did not so much care about, like, feckless white dude. But that's me.
I feel that way about Edge of Tomorrow. I feel like... what's her name's character should have been
Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt's character should have been the Tom Cruise character. But you know, I will often support the choice to make the woman the protagonist. Because of my love for Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which we have discussed complications around the problems with cop propaganda, especially when it comes to comedies and that sort of thing. But not putting that aside, but also integrating that into what I'm about to say. Like, I've grown to really love Andy Samberg because I loved Brooklyn 99, or I do still love Brooklyn 99. Oh my God. So much. So like, this is just the Andy Samberg character, except more jaded, right? Mm-hmm. he's not someone I ever thought about or knew of or anything before Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but I do have a soft spot now, I think, which probably colored me going into this film as well. I didn't know it was a time loop film. I had someone just be like, hey, if you want an easy breezy watch movie, like don't watch any trailers, just start watching it. And I've actually been researching time loop movies. Like I've been watching a bunch of them. So it was really bizarre to me that I was like, oh shit, here's another one. So I had just watched Groundhog's Day, which sort of prepares me a little bit more for the obvious parallels between the two. Mm-hmm. And Groundhog's Day obviously is like foundational time loop, one day loop movie that stars.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to go into this movie not knowing the concept, I knew it was a time loop movie, but still somehow at the beginning, I didn't get that Andy Samberg's character had already lived that day, a bajillion times already. I thought he was just like already just inherently a dude who just totally didn't give a shit about anything, right? Or whatever. And so there was something about then,
which was the point, right? Like that was
then like it was, for me, there was fun in that structure of, instead of starting with a character where, you are with them as they're experiencing it for the first time, which we ultimately do get the pleasure and the perspective of that with Sarah, but instead, we see him, like, our introduction to him is somebody who has just been, like, worn down by, who just can't find the pleasure in it at all anymore, and who then, like, I thought, oh, he's just a dude who just doesn't give a shit at all about this wedding, so he's wearing, like, a Hawaiian shirt and shorts or whatever, but then we see, oh, no, like, the first time we get the flashbacks of, like, oh, no, he was wearing a suit, and like, he was, like, not who he is now, but it's the experience that's kind of turned him into that person. I found that structure kind of fun and a nice kind of twist on the very familiar, time loop formula, personally.
And it does feel like, this movie is very much like informed by Groundhog's Day. There's a comment in the movie being like, that thing that
or, like it. Yeah, one of those time loops you may have heard of or something like that. Like,
which like clearly, and also because Groundhog's Day is so fresh, like it is kind of like a refresher of Groundhog's Day in a lot of ways, but bringing in the second, spoilers all around, y'all, on this one, on all of them, I guess. We don't really do spoiler warnings anymore, but I felt like wanting to do that for this. Like, if you haven't watched this movie and you're interested, go watch it first.
Yeah.
But bringing in the second person to experience the time loop with you so that you're not alone and what that does. Like, I think for a lot of us watching this right now, I suspect, like, the isolation and the disaffectedness and the just like resignation that Niles, the Andy Samberg character, feels, being like, I'm stuck and this is it and it fucking sucks and like this is what it's going to be and I did everything I could to make this better or get out of this, like, all of the try to murder myself, like tried to stay awake forever, all of the things, and I think that in a lot of ways this is coming at a really prescient time for us, because you're like, oh God, I feel that. Right? Like, I think we've all gone through our ups and downs of like being in isolation and being like, okay, I got this, I figured it out, and then being like, fuck, no, I don't have anything. What was I thinking?
I go ahead, Kara.
No, please.
I guess I get it. I do. I do. I promise. Don't write me. Don't hit me up on Twitter. I do get it. But there was a part of me that just remained so distant from Niles as a character, even while recognizing what a like profound, like this goes beyond a mind fuck, right? Like this is a true existential crisis. And yet, nevertheless, something that you alluded to in the intro, Anita, when you say like, like ethical considerations are raised, like even if you know that, each day that you live is going to be the same as the day before, like literally the same as the day before, like that nothing you do has any lasting impact beyond the time when you go to sleep, everything's going to reset. Nevertheless, do you have some human responsibility to treat people well? And so the fact that like Niles, not Andy, but Niles has reached the point, you know, in his own struggle with this, you know, his own resignation with his lot, that he can fuck with people because it's like, ultimately it doesn't matter. And I'm like, okay, maybe, but also it does matter because it matters who you are, right? And so the fact that he has to come to learn that through the emotional labor of someone who has been pulled, you know, involuntarily into this situation with him, even and Roy also demonstrates this, like, it just got to me, you know? And again, like I said, after the first 20 minutes, I was cool with this movie. But for the first 20, once I realized what was going on, I was like, but you don't get to be a shit every day.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that. So I'm sort of two minds about this film that simultaneously coexist, right? Where you know, I recognize that there are ethical problems just baked into the time loop concept that should not be ignored. And so I guess I'll talk a bit about those right now. So for instance, on Bitch Media, there's a piece called In Palm Springs, Consent is a Murky Line. It's by Sarah J. Lieber. And it's not really specifically only about Palm Springs. It's about other films that have the, you know, time travel elements, like the film About Time. And really any film in which a person can conceivably, or does, as is the case in this film, maybe repeatedly have sex with another person but only they remember it. Like, this is a piece that gets into, like, just like inherently, like, that's an extremely fucked up thing to. It's just fucked up conceptually. Like, it's you know, like, I can't sum up the piece effectively right now. We'll put the link in the show notes. I encourage people to give it a look. But, you know, there are ways in which we should kind of consider that aspect of it. And yet, I will be honest and say, at the very same time as, like, acknowledging that, there is also that level on which I'll admit, like, this is one of those films where I just want to, like, enjoy it on its own terms. And it was, like, a really welcome, for me, upbeat, sweet, for me, romantic, kind of funny film at a time where I could really use a film like that. And there's also the sense in which, you know, I think we do, as people, learn from each other. And we do, like, I don't want to say, so yes, we have to be concerned about, like, emotional labor and things like that. But I also don't want us to ignore the fact that as human beings, like, and particularly, maybe this is particularly resonant for me right now in this time of isolation and, like, really yearning for close contact with other people. Like, I liked seeing the way that Niles, learned, you know, like, things about what it means to have another person there and to care for them in a real way and to know them in a real way. Like, there's a point where Sarah, you know, says, where they're talking about, like, getting to know a person, and I forget the exact exchange, but you know, like, Niles says something along the lines of, like, it doesn't matter, like, the bad stuff doesn't matter. And Sarah's like, no, if you want to really know a person, like, it does, like, it all matters. And you know, like, things like that really appealed to me, because I'm, you know, like, it's like, well, that's what I want. Like, that's what I'm looking for, is, like, a real connection with another person where you really know them in some honest, like, true radical way that isn't just, like, you know, about, you know, like, I'm weird about dating apps and just dating and stuff, because I feel like I'm applying for a job and, like, just trying to meet the criteria rather than, like, and fill some boxes rather than being a real person. And so, I don't know, there were things about the relationship in this film where I'm like, okay, this is about two people trying to know each other and care about each other in a real way. And, you know, it's work and it's hard and it's not, you know, whatever. And it's messy at times and it's painful, but, like, I don't know, there was a seed there of something about their dynamic and their relationship that I really liked.
Well, I mean, but I think that's why I wanted the POV to be Sarah, because everything that you say, I did enjoy. I loved the way that we see Sarah start to reckon with what has happened, but also the kind of larger implications and the ways that it forces her to really think about who she is and what she's done. And spoiler alert, we find out that on this day that she's been reliving over and over again, she has been waking up in the bed of her sister's fiance, like the man that her sister is literally going to marry in 6 hours. She's been waking up in his bed every day and having to wrestle with that every single day. And so I just thought, like, oh man, what would it have been like if the film had opened on her, you know, and we watch her deal with this, because she is messy and she does go through a lot of these, just like, you know, these like the steps of learning like what it means to really like care for someone else and, you know, love someone else in a way that's not self-serving, you know, but also not put yourself second place. I mean, she talks about like her past relationships and whatever. So again, I want to emphasize, I liked this movie after the first 20 minutes, but it was because I just was like, oh man, if it had just been switched, I would have enjoyed it so much more. But there's also the realization that this film got made because Andy Samberg and Lonely Island Productions was behind it, right? Like, this was never going to be about a movie about a woman in that position as the point of view character.
I want to come back to the ethics question here, because I started thinking about this after you posted that article, Carolyn, because it didn't really occur to me in this film as I was watching it. So Groundhog's Day is... it is on the list of like creepy stalker movies because he, as a part of what we see in the film, you see that the main character learns things about women and then uses them to have sex with them. Uses those things that he learns to have sex with them. And so it's deeply manipulative and super fucking gross, right? In this movie, you don't see that happen. Right, you're not actively seeing that effort happen, but does it happen?
Well, yes.
Right, like so. There's a difference. There's a difference between like sort of bragging about it as you would a la 1991 filmmaking, and then here telling kind of a similar story, but not showing that part. But isn't it inherent that that's going to happen here?
Well, I mean, it's
in the ethics of time loop.
I mean, it may not show it, but we know. I mean, I think part of what the Bitch Media article is about is like, I mean, Niles, you know, he knows, for instance, the name of the hair mist, for instance, that she's used, right? And like, it becomes a thing where he confesses to her that, you know, that when he first tells her, no, that was our first time having sex, that was a lie. And they've had sex like more times than he can count, but that was always before she was in the loop. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that it's any better or different because we don't like see it happen. I mean,
exactly. Like that. That's sort of what I'm bringing up here. That like the movie's not bragging about that. It's not like actively being like, oh, look at this guy getting laid, you know?
Right.
So that is the thing. Like, is it? And I think that comes to play in what Ebony was saying of like, is it okay that this guy's a dick? Like, honestly, it's hard. There's a part of me that's like, dude, I probably would too at that fucking point, right? Like, I know that he's on drugs and on mushrooms and all this stuff when they ask, like, what did you do for work? And it's an easy way to not have to answer that question where he's like, honestly, I don't remember. Like, I've been stuck in this loop for so fucking long. This is all I know. That, like, at some point, yeah, you're going to be very laissez-faire about a lot of things, right? And like, and I'm not dismissing at all the ethical questions of like, is that okay? But at some point, like just as we're recognizing the sort of trauma or you know, sense of anxiety and horror that Sarah's feeling every fucking morning, waking up knowing she did this horrible thing to her sister, he's living every single day with like, oh my God, this is existence. Like, we just have to suffer through it. And I'm going to do these little things to like make it last. Or like to make it, you know, not last, I'm sorry, to make it bearable.
Right. I guess just because my sense of I don't think that this film excuses what he does or, you know, makes it the punchline of a joke, or suggests that like he's somehow incredibly brilliant for having hacked the system, you know, in some way. I do think that the film tries to take him to task for this, but my sense of Niles' character before the loop is that he's this kind of feckless dude outside of this time loop, right? And so, but Sarah, we just get a larger, better sense of who she is outside of it. Like, she just seems like a deeper, more resonant character. That's all I'm saying, really, is that, like, the things that Sarah does that, you know, are kind of fucked up, I think the film is more willing to, you know, linger on the fact that these are fucked up things and not try to, you know, like, we aren't allowed to kind of dismiss them easily because she's, you know, charming, funny guy in the way that we do for Niles. Because it's Andy Samberg and he's funny and he's great. And so, you know, it's like, okay, yeah, it's a fucked up thing you did, but you're so hilarious and cute.
And that actually is a good point in terms of how character development happens in this movie, because, like, we do kind of instantly think we understand Andy. But we're not really given a whole lot. Like, it's definitely done with a lot of tropes of, like, this character where, like, his girlfriend says, you know, don't bring the drama in here. Like, I know you hate weddings, and that's, like, all we get in terms of his backstory. And we already kind of feel like we know the guy because he comes in being all like, I'm gonna wear a Hawaiian shirt to this wedding. Whereas with her, like, her backstory is, you know, she drinks a lot and she sleeps around a lot. And I think that, like, we ascribe a lot to what it means to be that person. Like, as the audience, we're filling in those blanks. And so the character development we're getting, well, actually, I guess I just said the same thing. We are filling in the blanks with both of them.
But we do know, I think, a little bit, I don't know, or maybe it's just because I like her character so much, but, like, the fact that however long she's stuck in the loop, when she reaches her breaking point, what she does is she goes out and becomes a fucking physicist on her spare time at a diner and figure out how to fucking bust her way out of the system. Meanwhile, Niles has been doing this for not infinitely longer, but much longer, and has, you know, sort of, you know, decided, okay, it is what it is. Like, everybody is dealing with this in their own ways, but the way that Sarah, you know, deals with it does tell us, I think, a little bit more about her character, and the fact that kind of from the beginning, she is dissatisfied. Maybe it's because she hasn't been in it longer. Maybe if she had been in it longer, I don't know, she also would have given up, but I don't get that sense. You know, I feel like she would always have been like, no, I refuse to give up. I refuse to, like, let my destiny be determined for me. I have to get out of this.
There's a third character in the mix with the two of them.
Oh, yeah.
Who is named Roy, played by the one and only J.K. Simmons. And, I mean, J.K. Simmons is just a delight. Like, you know, whatever. Always kind of enjoy. I mean, you know, usually enjoy. See, he can be, of course, whatever. He can be intense and intimidating too, like in that music movie. But that music movie, whatever it was called.
Oh, right. God, that fucking
we're media critics.
Yeah, but I mean, you know,
what you're talking about. Best Picture nominee, blah blah blah. Birdman. No, that was the other one. They both were Best Picture nominees the same year, man, and I hated both of them. So whatever. Please continue, Carolyn.
But you know, I mean, you know, at least I'm one of those people who you see him show up in, like, a romantic comedy. It's like, oh, nice, J.K. Simmons. Yeah. He's whatever, you know. But his character in this, so Roy, you know, was sort of pulled into the vortex of time loopitude, you know, and now he hates Niles for, you know, for foisting this existential hell upon him as well. And, you know, like, Roy is a weird character in the sense that, I mean, he, so, you know, at one point, Niles, like, just, he's, I don't know, he's trying to do something. And so he decides, I'm going to go to Roy's house. So Roy is an older man, obviously. Again, he's played by J.K. Simmons. He has a much younger wife and, like, two young children, like, you know, children who are still growing up, like, and everything. And he says at one point,
like
so this
7 or 8, something like that.
Yeah. And like, this was, like, out of all the things in the movie, you know, that we can talk about as, like, big things at the, you know, that might be a little problematic, etc. Like, the one thing in the movie that made me go, ugh, was when Roy says of his wife, you know, about, like, okay, you know, being stuck in this day forever and ever. He says she's in the prime of her womanhood. I'm like, I'm like, okay. I mean, what is, you know, you're like this older man. I don't know. It's just like one of these. It's just like another part of the whole media just thing, always normalizing, like, older men with younger women, and, like, you know, and, like, this idea of women's value being tied to their kind of youthfulness and, you know, all that stuff. I was like, ugh, dude. I mean, and obviously, like, whatever, Roy is not necessarily supposed to be a character I mean, we're supposed to like him, but he's also supposed to be, he's a character, like in the sense of, wow, that dude's a real character. But it still was I was a little like, don't say that, Roy.
Yeah, and that whole so Roy finally resigns himself to the fact that he's gonna live this day over and over again, and he's gonna learn to love it. Which if he gets stuck in this time loop for long enough, he'll probably go through another phase of hating it or whatever.
Yeah.
But he talks about how he drank too many Mai Tais and couldn't put a condom on, and then he had got these twins, and thank God for Mai Tais, and just the whole thing. You're like, yeah, you're just a gross dude, man.
Yeah,
there's nothing good about you here. But the movie doesn't frame it that way, right? Not Andy, Jesus, he's so Andy Samberg. Niles goes to see Roy because he's heartbroken. He misses Sarah so much, and he's broken up about it, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's just I need to feel pain again, right? So he goes to the only other person that he can and sees the sort of settling down. It's very traditional in a lot of ways, right? Narratively. Yeah. And
also,
the kid watering the dog shit. And I mean, that was really funny where he's and there's my son watering dog shit. And I've seen that happen 26,000 times.
Yeah. Also great to see Dale Dickey in this movie, value for money, J.K. Simmons, Dale Dickey, always happy to see both of those. Yeah, I mean, there are laugh out loud funny moments in this movie, and there are also moments that are just unutterably sweet. Talking about this finding someone that you can connect with on that deep level when they are on mushrooms and they see the dinosaurs, whatever. You may think it was corny. I found that beautiful. I loved that moment.
I mean, for me, really the whole, this is a film that when it comes to romance and love is, it's in a lot of ways, it's aligned with my personal ethics or my personal, what I, the way that Niles, damn it, sets Sarah apart, that he recognizes that she is singular and special, and that it's not just because they're trapped in the time loop together, but that it's about choosing a person and recognize all of that stuff is it really worked on me.
Yeah, I think part of it is the romance in this, I think, is really sweet in a way that we don't necessarily always get. The getting to know you part, I thought was really nice. It wasn't it's colored and sort of ruined by the fact that we find out that they had already fucked before. But if you remove that a little bit, they just get to know each other because they're stuck in this space, and it seems like they sincerely like each other. And so when they do actually have sex, it's a very concerted effort to be okay, it's now time to do this, because we really like being with each other.
Yeah.
And so at the end, at the very end, when he he's I love her and blah, blah, blah. And she wants to get out of this and he wants to stay in it because to him, it seems like the best thing that's ever happened to him is meeting this person. And he doesn't want to break that spell. And she says, when he's when they're negotiating the relationship before they're about to blow themselves up, he says, what if we get sick of each other? Or Sarah says, what if we get sick of each other? And he's just, the way he says, we're already sick of each other. Just in the we've been through so much together. We know that we like being around each other, right? And she's life would be more bearable with you. It just felt, it felt established. It felt like a comfort.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like it had a basis in he has the foundation of experience from which to declare that, because he knows what it's like to go for fucking ever without feeling connected to another person, and so then he wasn't.
Yeah, and it wasn't puppy love either, right? Where it's no, we love each other so much, it's gonna last forever, and then you hate each other in a month or whatever.
Right. Exactly. To me, as ridiculous as the premise of this film, inherently absurd as the premise of this film is, I feel like it does have that earnest desire to treat the dynamic of their relationship as sincerely and substantially as possible, while still being a fun, silly, a charming, sweet kind of romantic comedy film. Exactly. You see this change in him, and as he understands that like life just means more when you have a connection, a meaningful connection to other people. Obviously that I like that a lot.
Yeah, I also, being the cynic that I am, I did love that he makes this declaration in the cave, before they're about to blow each other up, and it's like, you're everything. I can't live without you. I don't want to live without you, whatever. And crucially, Sarah says, I would be just fine without you, but I like it better with you.
Yeah.
Like, I love that kind of statement. It's so authentic and so real that I was just like, oh yeah, okay, golf clap for that one. I really do like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And the movie itself, like, is very colorful in a way that I feel like was refreshing. Like, just the aesthetics of it being in Palm Springs, right? It's the desert, the pools, and it's visually stimulating in a way that felt light and fluffy. That felt refreshing to me.
And the music does a great job of enhancing that tone as well. I think it's the soundtrack, I think, is really excellent. There are a few, interestingly, I think this movie deliberately leaves a few little lingering questions or puzzles that it doesn't answer, which are just, not central to what the film is doing or what it's about, but are just kind of fun to think about. So, for instance, there's the older woman at the wedding who, at the towards the very end, basically like Sarah's and Niles' like last night in the time loop, she says very sort of enigmatically something like, "Well, I guess you'll be going soon," which like, what does that like? Is she maybe? So my like little headcanon around that is, oh, she's in the loop, but she doesn't want to leave because she's old and maybe she's alone and maybe it's like it's too scary, like it is that comfort to her of just like that existence. But I don't know. But it's clearly like the film just wanted to like plant a seed of like, oh, what's up with that? That's interesting.
Well, there's also another question and maybe this isn't a question, but it was to me. So there's the sense that like because Sarah knows that tomorrow will come, right? She solved the problem. She knows how to do it. So she has a very nice time at the wedding, right? She makes sure that last day is good, right? So it's not like, her sister loses her teeth is the last day or what have you, right? She says a nice speech. Everyone dresses nicely, yada, yada, yada. There's nothing out of the ordinary. But the way that they show you, like at sort of mid-credits or, towards the end, where apparently Sarah had called Roy and said, I solved the problem. This is how you get out of it. Roy shows up at the wedding in his own time loop, and Niles doesn't recognize him or knows who he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like whose last day is what day is the memory of when is what? Because if you leave the time loop, then does that mean that everything resets somehow?
Yeah, I think my just little, woman with math equations hovering in front of her GIF sort of explanation for that is that that's only for Roy because he's still in the time loop, but that in the reality that Niles and Sarah are in, like everyone who in that reality would remember the wedding as it happened that day. But there's also the discrepancy or the question of Sarah says that how she knows that it works is that she uses like is it a goat or, an animal to test the theory. And then when the loop resets, the animal is gone. But then Sarah and Niles are not gone for Roy in his time loop. Why wouldn't they be gone? Like, I don't know, I don't know, whatever. And these are like not questions that matter at all.
I mean, this is what I actually love about time loop and time travel movies. And also this came up for us when we talked about The Old Guard, is there's so many questions we can ask. Like there's nothing's ever going to answer and all of the questions and be so like solidly, tightly created. And so I kind of enjoy this part of these kinds of films, to be like, wait a minute, what would happen here? And does this really make sense? And, whatever.
I think, as long as a film kind of takes itself and its own logic seriously, I can surrender to it, without kind of, bringing in an outside, magnifying glass and being like, well, the implication of this would be this. So what about that? I can set all of that aside if in the world of the film, it's, at least attempting to take itself seriously. So
there were a couple of little things that stood out to me. One is the fiance is Arabic speaking. I don't know what his background is. And so you have a couple of people kept saying shukran in an English accent to try to be like, we're down with the Arabic speaking person that my daughter's marrying or whatever, which I thought was funny. And I may have only noticed that because it's one of the 3 Arabic words that I know. And then the other thing was that when Andy was going, oh, Jesus, y'all, Andy Samberg can never not be him. He is not a character actor. He will never be. Niles was talking about his the sexual escapades that he has had during the time loop. He does talk about sleeping with a man. And I liked that wasn't played for laughs, really. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't I didn't interpret it as that. It was just I just had this experience because I'm fucking stuck here, and why not have this experience? And so I thought that was kind of the joke is that it's just one more in a series of I fucked everybody at this wedding or whatever. It wasn't and I fucked a dude, gross, ha ha ha. Yeah, totally. And it was so easily could have not been that, It so easily could have been the sort of hangover at comedy attitude kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Are we done talking about this movie?
I feel I think so.
Yeah, I think it's a really enjoyable, solid film that is a popcorn movie in a lot of ways that is not deeply offensive and is colorful and is kind of fun.
Yeah, it was just exactly the kind of pleasant, easy watching film that really hit the spot for me right now, while also, as I said, having just enough, heart and substance at its core in terms of, I think, what it's saying about caring for another person and what it actually means to be in a relationship and all that, to make it not just a completely disposable film, but a film that actually has something going on.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's great. We'll be right back with our weekly freakouts.
Hey folks, thanks for listening to FFR. If you enjoy spending a little time with us each week, please consider helping us continue to do the show by heading over to patreon.com/femfreak. Your support will enable us to stay on top of all the latest pop culture trends week in and week out, and you can get nifty perks like early access, bonus episodes, and friendly online communities where you can hang out with your fellow listeners. Go to patreon.com/femfreak today. Operators are standing by.
What's your freak out?
Now it's time to talk about what's been thrilling us, moving us, upsetting us, or infuriating us this past week. Carolyn, you want to get us started?
Sure. I was debating between 2 things, but I'm gonna talk about the one that is genuinely freaking me out, in the sense of I'm a little freaked out about this. So take this freak out with a, in all the complexity with which it's offered. There is a series on HBO Max called I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which is just one of the most evocative, perfect titles for anything ever, I think. I mean, I can't, I'll Be Gone in the Dark. It immediately grabs you. It's fucking amazing as a title for something. And in the context of the series, it takes on so many shades of meaning. So this is a 6-episode documentary series, and only 4 episodes have aired so far. So this is an incomplete, freak out at this point. It is about the work of a writer named Michelle McNamara, who is a crime writer who was particularly invested in the a figure who is now known as the Golden State Killer. This series is, in many ways, it's about writing. And as a writer myself, I love the way that it treats writing very seriously. It treats writing as labor. It treats writing as something difficult, as an undertaking, as a burden, as a challenge. People who know what about the book "I'll Be Gone in the Dark" know that it's a fairly tragic. It is a tragic, ultimately tragic sort of story in its own right, because Michelle McNamara died while writing the book. And in this documentary series, you see a lot of her footage of her. You feel her presence there, but she herself is gone. In this story about a serial rapist and killer, so she herself, the writer of the book, kind of haunts the documentary series. And you get so much access to like her as a person, like really personal stuff, text messages and things. You really get insight into what a challenge this story was for her to tell, and how could it not be a challenge? Because the subject matter itself is so haunting and so terrifying. You see the toll that it takes on her, and I'm like watching this documentary. I'm just watching it, and I feel the toll that the subject matter is taking on me. Like, because some of the events that this story covers are so terrifying that, and so this is where the caveat comes in of like, so I have PTSD myself from childhood trauma, and I have a tendency to be very hypervigilant and to be on guard against just, to do what's sometimes called catastrophizing, or fearing, like, my brain will just go down these pathways of like fearing the absolute worst. And I'm not going to go into any specifics, talk about any details here, but the documentary does go into detail, extreme detail about these crimes. And so there will be times at night when I'm just alone here in my apartment and I have nothing but my thoughts to keep me company, where my brain will start spinning out of control a little bit and fearing, like, or wondering, my God, what a night, like, how can there be people out there who do this to other people? What would it be like to be on the receiving end of this experience? It's so horrifying, you can't even imagine it. Or I can, and that's the problem. Like, this series has really gotten into my head. It's really gotten under my skin. It's, I feel this a tremendous connection to Michelle McNamara as a writer, like through this documentary series. So anyway, it's very complicated. It's extremely well done, I think, but it is difficult. It is haunting. It is, if you, like me, are liable to have intrusive thoughts and have things get in your head and start rattling around, be aware, before you watch this, that this series may truly unsettle you and terrify you. But it's also, and I think a very outstanding tribute to one writer's work and a really great series about what it means to be a real writer in the first place, and to tell stories that are sometimes difficult or painful, or to do the work of facing writing where there's nothing there to face in the writing but ultimately yourself.
Yeah. Do you find, because this isn't the first time you've engaged with like true crime type subjects, it sounds like you're finding this one a lot more personally challenging.
I am. And I think part of the reason for that is the way that it, it's a lot of things. It's the nature of the crimes themselves. So like the way in which you get the sense, you just know that this figure, who at the time was sometimes called Eron's East Area Rapist, Original Night Stalker, Golden State Killer, the way that he was invisible, the way that he just moved in these communities where he generated so much terror, but was invisible in them. Like, there's something just just deeply unsettling to me about that, where I'll be like walking around my neighborhood or, the street and be like, he must have looked on some level like a quote unquote ordinary person, right? In some way. And yet inside of him was the desire and the impulse and the ability to do these things that just shattered lives and communities with their transgression and their horror and their violation and their violence. But on top of that, the layer of how it tells the story of Michelle McNamara as a writer who, like, what I love about it is the way that it's so honest about her struggles as a writer and like her insecurities, the things that I as a writer feel and that so many writers feel, like, oh my God, I can't write, I just don't feel the motivation right now. I've lost the excitement. I feel like what I'm writing is crap. And, there's a bit where she's like, she was married to the comedian Patton Oswalt, and she's like, his book is so amazing, and I feel so insecure, and so, like, it's so humanizing of her, and so honest about the toll that it takes on her, that is a part of why it feels so much more human to me than a lot of true crime stories, and that's also what makes it more horrifying and more difficult, is that I feel the intensity of the horror that much more vividly as well.
Yeah, damn. I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch it, but I kind of do now. Like, I'm both drawn to it and a little bit terrified of it. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Carol. Ebony, what do you got this week?
Wow. That was real, Carol. So I'm freaking out about P-Valley this week, and I suspect I'll be freaking out about it, but, not on the podcast. In subsequent weeks. So P-Valley is a new series on Starz, created by, written by, showrun by a writer named Katori Hall. It is set in the Mississippi Delta, specifically in a strip club called Pink. And it is just so Black and so country. I love it so much. There's so much going on there in the show about class and gender and oh my God, it's so full, but it's also so, lurid, and there's so much melodrama. It's just, I am really, really enjoying it. In the same way that, I really loved like Miss Juneteenth, for instance. There's a way in which like certain kinds of small town Black life don't really make their way onto our screens. And there are key scenes in both Miss Juneteenth and in P-Valley where we see Black men riding horses, like in, full Western garb. I love that stuff. It's part of like my background. Like my family comes from these kind of places. And so I love it. But I'm also in love with, so there's only been 2 episodes released so far. But one of the characters that everybody is talking about and everybody is loving is this just, oh my God, stunning and stunningly realized gender fluid character named Uncle Clifford, played by the actor Nico Annan, who is just this like fulsome embodiment of feminine and masculine with, like talon nails and like hair laid to the gods, but a full beard and just like, oh my God, I love it. I love that this is the world that has been constructed and is built. The show is based on a play that Katori Hall wrote, I want to say like around 2015. So anyways, it's on Starz. I encourage people to check it out. It is fully, completely explicit. So, not one for people who are easily shocked. But anyway, I'm super into it. P-Valley.
Nice. I'm going to shout out 2 very different games. One is called Carrion by Phobia Game Studios. Just came out by Devolver. I think it like just came out. So we're recording this on Friday. I think it just came out. And it is a game. It's dubbed a horror video game, but I wouldn't call it horror because I can actually play it. So it's sort of like a reverse horror game because you're playing the monster that's killing everyone.
Yeah.
And I played a couple of hours of it, and it just feels really good. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, the way that the monster moves in the world, like, you're literally ripping apart, characters, and it's like, you know, you hear them screaming and stuff. Like it's not like realistic like Last of Us by any means.
It's pixel.
Yeah, you can barely
graphics,
see
right?
them.
Yeah,
but you do hear people screaming and stuff. So just a warning. But you're this like blobby, this blobby red tentacled monster, and you're like crawling up walls, and you're like running into people and stuff. And so, you know, I thought it was the bit that I played was really good. So if you're into that thing, I think it's out on many platforms. And then the other one that I want to shout out is very different. I actually learned about it from playing some games in the Itch.io Racial Justice and Equality bundle, or bundle for racial justice and equality that a lot of folks purchase. So if you're one of them, this is in there. If you're not, it's a less than $10 game. I didn't even say what it was yet. It's called A Mortician's Tale. And it is by Laundry Bear Games, and it's really, really sweet. It is it's an educational game about what it means to be a mortician. And so, you know, like you actually like learn you know, as much as you would in a sort of simpler video game, but you learn like kind of the different types of things that you would do as a mortician when people die and come to the funeral home. But it also has these like little educational moments where it's like, you know, there's a newsletter that comes in that's like Morticians Weekly or whatever, and it tells you about like, you know, ecological factors in how like, you know, death care industry. It talks about trans issues. And it also talks about like the impersonal corporate takeovers of smaller businesses. So for like a 1 hour game, it actually gets into quite a bit of like a real intro overview of what it's like to work in as a mortician. So I highly recommend it. I thought it was sweet. Did you play it, Carol?
Yeah, I didn't, but I've heard, you know, so many people talk about it. So I think I will make the time to play it. Yeah.
And this week we have a guest freak out from listener Chelsea, who is freaking out about the Babysitters Club.
Hey FemFreak, I am freaking out about the new Babysitters Club series on Netflix. I love how true it is to the feeling of the books. I love the references for adults viewers who are nostalgia watching. I love the updates for diversity and all the casting. One of the big things that I really enjoyed was the superb inclusion of a trans both actor and character, and their storyline wasn't just about them being trans. I do wish that the actress cast for Jessie was darker, but I absolutely love how they deliberately cast very young actresses rather than aging them up. And overall, the series just blew me away, and I enjoyed it so much. And they did such a great job with Claudia in particular, who is one of my absolute favourite characters. So that's my current freak out, and I think they've done an amazing job.
Thank you so much for submitting that, Chelsea. I have actually been watching the Babysitters Club too. I'm not done. I think I'm like, I don't know, 5 or 6 episodes in, but I'm loving it. I was a huge fan of the books growing up. I don't know if it's like a generational thing or if like people before or after me read it. Like I'm not really sure how timeless the Babysitters Club is, but I think that there's just a lot of stuff that they're doing. Like it's a show deeply for kids that I think has a lot of really progressive values and stories in it that I think is really valuable. So thanks for sharing that with us. You can submit your own freak out at feministfrequency.com/freakout. That's FREQOUT. Thanks so much for listening to Feminist Frequency Radio. Stay tuned for the Freakin' After Party, which is only available to backers of this podcast. You can learn more at patreon.com/femfreak. Be sure to rate and subscribe and review us on all of the platforms in which you might listen to such things as our podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and all the social medias at femfreak. The show is engineered by Rob Para. Carrie Stimpson provides technical support, artwork by Jamie Varon, and our intro music is by Phil Circus. Join us next week for another feminist dive into pop culture. Bye.
Later.
Bye.